Wednesday class that shall not be named. We're here today with a wonderful group of people. We've got Michael, Karen, Flossie, Harleen, and the disembodied hand we call Ron. A lot of people, I guess, are out of town. Everybody's doing well, especially the people watching on YouTube. I know we always have a bunch of people there. Today, I probably should have done something more American. Class that shall not be named. 1 second. We're here today with we're going to pause for 1 second as I deal with the emergency right now. We may be interrupted once in a while by my son who is in the class here with a cough.
Can I just, Rabbi?
Yes, 1 second.
I hate you.
He'll be fine. It's just his show was not working.
I hate you.
Okay.
I hate you.
There we go. We fixed it.
You know what? He sounds good. I bet he's just playing hooky.
He is, I think. He's got a little bit of a cough. He knows he does not get he doesn't get the technology except on weekends. So now he does because he's here.
Oh.
So let's go ahead and shouldn't intrude on us. What we're going to do today, we should have done, I thought about American stuff. Now I think about it's too late, but we're going to do continue Jewish symbols because we had a really good discussion on the last week, the tallis, the yarmulke, and tefillin.
Rabbi, Karen has a question, I believe.
No.
Question?
I'm okay.
Sure.
No, I was just thinking if it becomes problematic, there's only a few of us.
Oh no, it's not problematic at all.
Okay.
Once he's watching a show or playing a video game,
okay,
he can concentrate for 16. We've timed it. He can do it for 16 years straight without food, water.
Yeah, I don't know how we raised our kids without that.
Well, we really got a lot more strict about them, and they no phones or iPads on weekdays. But this is the exception if he's here while I'm working. But he's also super cute, so it's okay. So today we're going to talk about a couple other symbols. The first one, the one we talked about, is the most famous symbol of all, which we briefly touched upon, which of course is none other than the Star of David. And we'll talk a little bit about the history or the lack of knowledge of the history.
Many Democrats now in panic mode. President Biden's chances of November.
No worries, I had my son.
So
we'll go over that a little bit. And now we all know the Jewish star, the Magen David, the Shield of David is basically the symbol of Judaism today. I mean, Jews look at it that way. Traditional Jews, liberal Jews, non-Jews. So it has definitely become the symbol, in no small part of because of Israel. Morocco used to have a flag with the Star of David on it. When Israel was founded, they changed their flag because it was now a Jewish symbol. So we know it wasn't always. So let's talk about the hexagram, which is the ultimate symbol in Judaism. There's mystical views about the two triangles. It's supposed to go all the way back to David. So what do we know? We know for sure, almost for sure, that it's not part of the history of David. We have no actual evidence that it existed. Actually, we have very little evidence of King David himself, but we don't have anything that goes that far back by any stretch of imagination, certainly not with the star. And so that we know is not the case. But where do we see the origins of it? And that's where it gets a little bit more dicey, because the origins are not as easily found as we might think. Now, the origins of the symbol are pretty obvious because the symbol itself, the two reversed sided triangles, the hexagon, the six-sided star, is something we do see up to almost 2,000 years ago. but is it a Jewish symbol? We see it in a synagogue in the 3rd, 4th century. So that's one of the oldest Jewish stars we see on a synagogue. There's an 11th century Bible that has it in it. But when did it become the symbol of Judaism? So let's look at it. It's not part of the Bible any means at all. I mean, except for the ancient synagogue we see in the Galilee, we don't really see this symbol. Gershom Scholem talks about the seal of Solomon. So when you hear the word seal of Solomon, you think that it is a Jewish artifact, but the seal of Solomon was what the Muslims called it, not what the Jews called it. So what we see is this symbol, although ancient, was used by a wide variety of groups of people. So we see it occasionally in the Jewish world. It's part of the Bar Kokhba revolution. So it was Jewish in some ways. We see it's part of the oldest Bible, or one of the oldest Bibles, the Leningrad Codex. We see it in certain places in Spain. We see it used by the Kabbalists, which we'll talk a little bit more about. We see it, and we say, we're going to pause for 1 second as I get water for my son. Can you say hi again, Ari? And remember, try to do your own thing right now because I'm teaching, but I'll be free in just a moment. So here's some water, buddy. I'll give you a very special class. If you go sit over there, and you can use the water. By the way, this is being recorded, so. So we see it's being used in ancient society. However, it's not being used just by Jews. It's being used by a wide range of different groups of people. And so that's where this dilemma comes in as to why it's a Jewish symbol, because in ancient use, it is used by other cultures, a lot of them, even as past Europe, past the Middle East. You see it in Indian symbols. You see it in symbols of Christian, non-Christian. So the symbol itself goes way back, but it's not necessarily a Jewish symbol. The Greeks used it. You see it called the seal of Solomon on various Muslim pieces of history. As I said, it was on the Moroccan flag. It is used, I'm not sure where I was used in the Greek world. As I said, the Indian world. It's part of Hinduism. In fact, there's older evidence of it in Hinduism. There is in Judaism, I believe. So this is something that was used by the Hindus in India, by the Muslim and the old ancient Muslim caliphates. It's been used at times in the Christian world. It's been used at times in the Jewish world for different things, even with Rabbi Akiba and Bar Kokhba. It is in no way something that goes back to the time of David. So it is part of the Jewish world, but if you had asked somebody 1,000 years ago, what's the symbol of Judaism, their answer probably would have been the menorah. And we'll talk about that. That's the true ancient symbol. Ron.
Yeah, when I was dosing, we all looked up the Star of David, and there's a lot of different thoughts about it, like you mentioned. But the one I like the best is that when David went into battle, he had two shields, two triangular shields, one in the front, one in the back, and God fused them together to make the Star of David. That's one story.
That's a beautiful story. And we're going to talk about some of those, but that is a beautiful story. They used the symbol for various things in the Zohar for lots of different meanings. However, we know probably it wasn't used by King David. We know 2,000 years ago it was used as part of the Jewish world, but it was also used later in the Muslim world, in the Hindu world, and placed in the Greek world even earlier. And so it is a symbol that is used. We're going to talk about the meanings. But the question is, when does it become the symbol of Judaism? As I said, 500 years ago, if you'd asked somebody what the symbol of Judaism is, they probably would have said the menorah. Now, when does that change? When does it become less the menorah and more the
Star.
Star of David? And that is a good question. So what do we think? There is no 100% right answer. We do know that the symbol was being used throughout this time in various places. But when does it become? One of the beliefs that has become prevalent is that the symbol was used not because of any meaning, but because of its simplicity. What do I mean? In the Christian world, they had a cross, 2 lines, very easy. And at some point, different European communities probably had a need for the Jews to have a symbol, something they would put on Jewish doors, something that would be put on Jewish synagogues, something that might be required for Jews that was easy, like they would put the Star of David, like the cross on a Christian home
Church.
or a Christian church. And so this is possibly what happened. We know as early as the 14th century that the King of Bohemia gave the Jews of Prague the permission to use it on a flag for their community. This is a very early place. We see it in Prague all the way into the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. But for the rest of the Jewish world, it wasn't quite there yet. Eventually, probably in the 17th century, when Jews were being put in shtetls and ghettos and being put in what we call the Pale Settlement, this symbol was chosen for the Jewish community or also by the Jewish community. So was it chosen in a negative way? Possibly, possibly not, because it had been a symbol of Judaism. If you're a Christian leader and you're trying to give a symbol to the Jews, you don't necessarily just say, I'm going to give you whatever I want. You look and see some old Jewish symbols, you find the simplest one, and voila. Now, the inverted star, the 6-sided star, had been used in the Christian world as well, but much earlier. And so both Jews and Christians together helped the Jewish world choose this. And for instance, 1650, the Jews of Vienna choose the hexagon, and it becomes a symbol for which Jews will keep. And when they go from one city to another, they'll have the symbol on them, and so that helps them to be identified. This is before it is used in negative connotations. Obviously, it will then be used. It's already been used in negative connotations before that, but as we know, as time comes and goes, the symbol is placed upon Jews in places where Jews are having a difficult time. When Jews have to wear the Jewish star, it is usually not a good place. When they're creating a ghetto that Jews are required to live in, what do they put on the ghetto? They put the Jewish star. That is a way to separate the communities. And so at some points, it may have been given to Jews just for architectural reasons. At some points to, basically understand where the Jewish community was. You need it for conscription, for military use, if they're required to do certain things. And then later, of course, it became a negative stereotype, a way to mark Jews as apart in a negative way. So really, when we're looking at when did this symbol become the Jewish symbol? We're probably talking about the 17th century. So maybe 350, 60, 70 years ago. So not very long ago in the Jewish world. So again, it then eventually moved into the Middle Eastern world as well, but a little bit later. So really, the symbol that many people in our world think goes back countless generations does not. We knew about this symbol. It was used here and there for different reasons, but it really only became our Jewish symbol in the 17th century. Karen.
I've seen it a number of times in cathedrals in Europe, whether it's in a stained glass window or some way. And I've always been surprised why that way. And I thought maybe it had something to do with Jesus. So it just never occurred to me it wasn't a Jewish symbol at the time that was built. So that's,
Yeah, and
I wish I'd known that when I saw it.
I mean, it is a symbol now. I mean, it's
Yeah, oh
anything
yeah.
else. I'm
I
going
was
to talk
always
a
surprised.
sermon with the only thing about tradition we know is that it changes. You know, we have it again. It was on the flag in Prague. It's obviously on the Leningrad Codex, the most famous Bible in the world. We know that it was used by Bar Kokhba. So again, we know it's been used in our history going way back even. Bar Kokhba is almost 2,000 years ago. But we also know it was used by all these other religions and entities as well. The Greeks, we may have even copied it from the Greeks, and there's probably a very good likelihood of that. Who knows? It's been used in ancient times as well, going back a very long time. As to its meaning, though, you have to understand it becomes the symbol of the Jewish world in the 17th century. When does really the Kabbalah and mysticism take hold? In the 16th century. So really the 16th, 17th century, where the Star of David is starting to become the symbol of Judaism. My son is really cute. That's when mysticism. So if we want to look at some of the meanings, we can do that as well, which we're going to do. What are some of the meanings of the double triangles, the hexagon, that's been on memorial stones in Italy from the 3rd century? I mean, it goes way back. But when it comes to mysticism, it's very easy to see what we can study about it. So let's look at the hexagram and see some of the beliefs, and we'll go through a variety of them. Isaac Luria, who is the greatest Kabbalist of all time, spoke, or at least his students did. Now, when we talk about Isaac Luria, we talk about him. He's the mystical Moses. However, he never wrote anything down. So everything that was written by his students. So they talk about that they represent some of the Sfirot, the connections to God. There's basically 10, but 7 are ones, think of the Sfirot as a bridge to God. We can get up to the 7th level. The last 3 levels are only for God. So there's 3 on one, crown, wisdom, and insight. And there's 3 on the other. And then the middle would be the 7th one. So you have the 7 symbols represented by the 6 edges and the middle. And those are the feminine, the outside are the feminine and masculine connections to God. And in the middle is the 7th one, the closest you can get to God. And so that is one of the beliefs, that it represents the Sfirot. The Sfirot is the most famous teaching from the Kabbalah. So that's why it's used that way in some cases. So represents the Sfirot. Others say that it remains connected in other ways, that it could be representing directions of God, that God is east, west, south, north, up, down, and in the center. Kind of like what we do when exactly, those are Sfirot. Kind of like what we do with when we're in Sukkah with the lulav and etrog, we shake them in 4 directions up and down, That's 6, and then the center would be us, would be 7. I think I just invented a whole new way of looking at the Jewish star. So please make sure if anybody asks that the Jewish star being connected to the directions we do the Lulav and Etrog, that is me. I want to be in the history book. So I definitely developed that theory all by myself, just in case you were wondering. So what are some other things? So those are some of the more famous ones. The Zohar, the book that is the book of mysticism. Sorry, I keep hearing my son watching a show. He's so cute. Says there are 3 knots connecting 3 entities, one to the other. The Holy One, Torah, and Israel. The Jewish soul connects to its creator through the study and observance of Torah. The triangle represents the connection between these entities. So the triangle represents the 3 aspects of the Jewish world: God, Torah, and Israel. But as we know, there's a 4th, and the 4th is the people. So God, Torah, Israel, and the Jewish soul is in the middle, and that is the essence of the Kabbalah. So often when I teach Judaism, I say there's 4 essential elements: God, Torah, Israel, the land of Israel, and the people. And so that is kind of what some would say.
I think
One of the triangles represents the
makes sense.
4 parts of Judaism. The other one might be something that are a little bit more connected with the soul. So a little more esoteric. Some would say the double triangle symbolizes the connections between both dimensions of God, Torah, and Israel. That there may be one in the next world and this world, kind of like there's always saying that there's 2 Jerusalems, one in the next world. Maybe there's 2 dimensions, the next world and this one. And one represents God, Torah, and Israel in this world. One represents God, Torah, and Israel in the next world. And maybe the soul is the connector that connects us to each. Some believe others. They believe that this represents, again, very similar to the 7 Sfirot, to 7 emotions that connect us: kindness, severity, harmony, perseverance, splendor, foundation, and royalty. They call it the 7 emotions, but it really doesn't make sense. Very similar to the Sfirot that connect us to God. So we could spend a very long session, or 2 or 3 or 10, talking about the mystical views of the Star of David, because it is such a cornerstone. And some would say the fact that, the 2 stars overlap, but the middle overlaps, and the soul itself is there, and that's what connects the 2 planes of existence. So there's a lot of mystical views on the Star of David, but what we also have to look at is the practical view of the Star of David. It became the symbol of Judaism, but when was that cemented? It was the 17th century became the symbol of Judaism because it was placed on doors, placed on ghetto walls, but this was not always chosen by the Jewish community. And so some may have even said it could have been a symbol of oppression, because we had to wear the Jewish stars in places long before Nazi Germany and other places. When did we take it for our own? And that is also very obvious, and that is in the late 19th century, because that is when they had the first and second Zionist congresses in Basel. And there they chose the flag, although the proto-flag is a little different. They began to choose a flag for the state of Israel. And the proto-flag had the Star of David in it. You can go along and see the pictures. And then, of course, once the state was founded, what did they choose to put in the middle? 2 of the symbols we mentioned. We talked about this last week. They chose the tallis with the Jewish star in the middle. A more ancient symbol, because obviously the tallis goes all the way to the biblical age, all the way to the Torah. with a more modern symbol, which had been part of the Jewish world for a long time, but hadn't been the symbol, and that is the Jewish flag. And as I mentioned, as soon as they did that, the Muslim world, which had used the six-sided symbol, triangle, six-sided star in their religion, got rid of it. Most obviously when Morocco immediately changed its flag, which had the Seal of Solomon on it. Now in the Muslim world, they don't talk about the Seal of Solomon very often, I don't think, because it's now considered a Jewish symbol, which is really interesting how other cultures have used this symbol, not necessarily as the symbol, but it's been used, as we mentioned, in Hinduism, by the Greeks, by the Muslims, by the Christians, by the Jews. But we eventually took it as our own, and everybody said, okay, we don't really, it's yours. It wasn't like there was a fight over it. It was never the symbol of any religion. It was one of many. So now it is ours for the keeping. Excuse me for a second. Yes, Ari, I'm teaching. I'll get to you in 1 second, buddy. It's our symbol now. Congratulations to us. Because everywhere you go, whether it's on a necklace, whether it's in the sanctuary where you're supposed to have the Ark of the Covenant, the eternal light, and maybe the 7-branch candelabra, in most synagogues you will see the Star of David somewhere on there.
Daddy, open this.
Are you asking for candy, or are you just telling me to open it? Okay. It's nice when you're sick and you don't want... Flossie, you have a question?
Yes, two quick questions. One,
Yeah, he gets really sick, doesn't he?
you just mentioned another symbol, the eternal light.
Yes.
We didn't. What is the origin of that? And the other
Great question.
And the other question is: does Jerusalem have a translation, a meaning? When we say Jerusalem, does it have a...
Oh, yes, yes. So, are you okay? What happened, buddy? Oh, come here, buddy. Come here, sorry. Are you okay, buddy?
Yeah.
He bit his tongue. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to give you a hug?
I'm fine.
Okay, you okay? So, Jerusalem, there's a lot of different beliefs as to what the meaning of. So, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, is Yeru, which can mean something like flow, like water flowing probably. And Shalem can mean a lot of different things. It can mean whole. It can mean, some would say, peace. So it can mean like the flow of everything, the flow of peace, something like that. So that's what probably the origin is. But again, you know, the word itself may predate Hebrew in some ways. So that's also a debate. But that's what often it is. So it can also mean, some would say, Yara, which is kind of means to throw something, or fear. Shalem, so the fear of the whole could also be one, because Shalem can be whole. Some say peace, but mostly whole. So, but it could be the flow of peace, throwing peace, the whole of peace. I mean, the whole of the flow of everything, the fear, or more the awe of everything. So it's a kind of a lot of different things. I would probably say awe of peace might be the best one, but that would just be me. So, but if you go online, you'll find. But you've already had a lot of candy. If you finish that one, I'll give you another. Okay, one more. Okay, but that's the last one.
Lollipop.
Yes, he knows that if he has me trapped.
Yeah.
He scene while I'm on talking to everybody. Gotta appreciate that kind of understanding of his world. Doesn't even ask. I'm just taking the candy, going in front of the camera, so Daddy knows I will not, if he wants me not to make a scene. So the flow of peace, the awe of peace, the flow of whole, the awe of the whole of everything. So again, some would call it the city of truth as well, although that's not really the translation. So that's a good question. That came out of nowhere. So it's basically Yeru Shalem. So those are the two words that probably are it's made of. All right, so let's go. We're going to go over next the original symbol, but since somebody asked about the Ner Tamid, the Ner Tamid is a much simpler symbol to discuss in many ways, although there is a lot of meaning behind it. The meaning is much clearer than everything else because it's dictated in the Bible. We have basically references to light, especially in Exodus, that you will always have a light for God. The light was always lit. Menorahs were always lit. And when they were traveling in the desert, every day they made sure the light was lit in the Holy of Holies, in the tent. So we know that we can prove, which is great, that the menorah was in the second temple, at least used in the second temple. How can we prove that without a shadow of a doubt? That there's some connection because anybody been to Rome? You go to Rome, you see the Arch of Titus.
Oh, yeah.
Which you used to be able to go up to, but I think there's a fence around it now, somebody told me. It shows the Romans taking away the giant menorah after they destroy the temple. So there's a very clear indication that the menorah was used in the synagogue or in the temple, or at least was part of the Jewish world. We have it mentioned in the Bible as we are told to build it with the gold we take from the Egyptians after we leave Egypt. So we are told to build it. What's his name? What's his name? The artist.
Chagall?
No, the artist from that time, Bezalel.
I'm sorry.
Told to,
Okay.
Chagall is the most famous artist. Bezalel is the artist from the time period of the Israelites, is told to lead in the building of it. So we know we have the light, and light has a very big place in the Jewish world. As we know, during the day, there was a pillar of fire that would lead the Israelites. God is represented as light, the very beginning of the creation of the world. Let there be light. So this tradition goes way back, much older than any other tradition just about in Judaism, save for maybe Brit Milah, circumcision. But if you go to the creation of the world, light actually predates that. So the Ner Tamid is the representation of this belief that God is here all the time, and we represent God through light. Now, did they use it in synagogues in the biblical world? No, because they didn't originally have synagogues. But when synagogues started to be built, 2nd century, 1st century BCE and CE, eventually they started to put this in there very early on. And so it's not in the very earliest synagogues, we believe, but it is in pretty early ones. And so now what we also have to debate is the rules of the Sabbath. If you're lighting something every day, can you light something on the Sabbath? Now, for us, it's simple because we have electronics, it's on automatically. But if you're using oil and you have to light it and you're not allowed to light a fire, how did you do it? Did you have a pre-lit fire that was used? And then you use some sort of stick, this is before candles, to light the oil to ensure it was always lit. So these are questions that we don't know 100%, but we do know pretty early on that the eternal light was used in the sanctuaries, and we're talking 2,000 years ago. So maybe not the first ones, but certainly the oldest ones. There are also debates as to what they used. Was it petroleum, some sort of petroleum? Were they using olive oil, as we see from what we're supposed to do from the times of the Torah? So we don't know about these things as well. But we do know that in the Talmud, that at least from the 3rd, 4th century, they're already talking about the eternal light in the sanctuaries. So now, any questions? All right. So let's go ahead and go to one more symbol. So if you go, every synagogue almost has the eternal light, representing God's presence, representing the ancient tabernacle, the temple. We've switched from having a menorah lit all the time to eternal light, but there's a very big tradition of having the in a sanctuary to have somewhere the menorah. Like in our sanctuary, we have 2 of them on the bima. So let's talk about the symbol of Judaism. We know today it's the Jewish star, but the original symbol, without a doubt, has got to be the menorah, because we've been using it for a very long time. Now, how long? From the very beginning. This is a Moses time, which is much older than any other symbol we have. So during the time of Moses, after exiting Egypt, after coming to Mount Sinai, we build the menorah. It says it's out of pure gold. You're going to use olive oil, put it in the tabernacle. There's a belief that at Solomon's temple there were 10 menorahs. There may have been multiple menorahs. There's a belief there were multiple menorahs in the second temple. But obviously we only have the Arch of Titus, which says there was one. There could have been many of them, but we know there's one. And there it is.
I'm trying. Can you see it? I'm trying to.
Not push it. There you go. We can say there you go.
Yeah, I wanted to.
So you see, it's a pretty sizable thing. It's not as big as a person, but it's pretty sizable. But again, we don't know if that rendition is to scale. Was the menorah bigger? Was it the one that was being lit, or was it a big one that was out in front? Very likely it was probably one being lit, since we do have that is specified in the Torah and the Bible, and we know by the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, they knew the Torah and all those books. Michael, and you're on mute. Oh, maybe Michael didn't say anything. Okay, so now what happened to the original menorah? That's the question. We know what? We know that it was taken by the Romans. We know they reported that it went to eventually Carthage during the sacking of Rome. So they had it for a very long time, if this is true. Did they keep the menorah this whole time? We don't know. We know that the menorah is on the coins of the Hasmonean leaders. The Maccabees used it as their symbol. We have those actual coins today. So we know it was a well-known symbol in the Jewish world beyond just being used. Some people might say it was only in the temple, so only the priest and maybe the Levites saw it. No, the Maccabees used it as a symbol of their rebellion. So the everyday Jew at least probably knew about it. And so it probably was the symbol of Judaism. It is reported it went to Rome. Rome is sacked, and that menorah then went to Carthage. And then we know eventually the Vandals take Carthage in 455 CE. Did the Vandals take the menorah and do something with it, like burn it down for the gold? Is it somewhere in the Vatican, which I personally believe? It's definitely there. They've got it. that was sarcasm. I have absolutely no idea. I've never been,
Oh, I was gonna say.
because everything else is the Vatican. It's in the Vatican, right next to Jimmy Hoffa's body, which has been preserved in some sort of mummification process. But we don't know. So that's the theory. Went to Rome. That we know probably we saw it. May have gone to Carthage when Rome was sacked. May have been taken by the Vandals. We don't know. Unlike the Ark of the Covenant, where there's all these discussions about where it ended up, the discussions about the menorah is not as interesting because the Ark of Covenant actually has the 10 Commandments. So the Ark of the Covenant, we can talk about where it is. Those of us in the know are just not allowed to tell you. Sorry about that. So what about the menorah? It is a symbol of Judaism going so far back that it is grandfathered in many ways into the prohibition on art. As Jews throughout the ages were not allowed to do art, depict human beings, what was the one thing that they did make art of?
Menorah. The
We see it
menorah.
all over- we see it all over the place. We see it in sanctuaries, on stained glass windows. We see it on coins. We see it on the covers of books, of Haggadahs. We see it everywhere. It is not a symbol that is hidden. We see it all over the place, almost exclusively in the Jewish world, unlike the Jewish star. So in antiquity, it would have been known as a Jewish symbol. Obviously, if it had been a simpler, it's a difficult symbol. You got to go like this, 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 this. If it had been a simpler symbol, it probably would have become the Jewish symbol for all time, but it's a little harder to do for some people. What's also very interesting about the Arch of Titus and the coins from the time of the Maccabees is we know a general description of the menorah that's found in the Torah, but it's not as specific as what we see on the coins and in the Arch of Titus. So those examples have helped us to figure out what it may have looked like during the time of Moses. If we didn't have the Arch of Titus and the coins from Judah and these synagogues, we may not have known. But really, we have evidence of what the menorah looks like to pretty early on, 2nd century. So there's even some older. So we have some good references to what it looks like. So that may actually be what it looks like. In the actual text, it says, make a lampstand of pure gold, hammer out its base and shaft, and make it flower like cups, buds, and blossoms of one piece with them. 6 branches are to extend from the sides of the lampstand, 3 on one side, 3 on the other. 3 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms are to be on one branch, 3 on the next, and the same for all 6 branches extending from the lampstand. And on the lampstand are to be 4 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms. 1 bud shall be under the first pair of branches extending from the lampstand, a 2nd bud under the 2nd pair, and a 3rd bud under the 3rd pair, 6 branches in all. The buds and branches shall be all of one piece, with the lampstand hammered out of pure gold. Then make it 7 lamps and set them up on it so that they light the space in front of it. Its wick trimmers and trays are to be of pure gold. A talent of pure gold is to be used for the lampstand and all accessories. See that you make them according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So that is what we are told to make. And so throughout history, there's been debates on how we should do it. What is the approximate distance from one lamp to the other? Where did it actually go in the temple? How high should it be? What should it look like? Are we free to make other representations of it? We have, of course, the Arch of Titus, but that's not the other one. There's another one called there's a synagogue at Magdala, which has a very prominent stone with it on it. So it is incredible that we have so much. And here comes my son. No more candy, buddy. No more candy. No more candy. Sorry,
One
buddy.
more.
No more. You go
One
ahead.
more.
Come here and come here and show everybody your muscles. Show your
Please, one
muscles.
more. Please, one
Okay,
more.
show your muscles. Show your muscles. Look at my big guy's wearing his
No.
sleeveless shirt.
One
And
more.
we're gonna eat lunch first. We'll eat
One
lunch.
more.
Do you have your lunch with you? Okay. After lunch, I'll give you more. Did you already eat your lunch? Did you eat your lunch already, buddy? All right. All right. So that went better than I expected. Not too bad. All right. So, any questions about the menorah as we continue to talk about it? So now when we talk about the menorah, we also have evidence of where it went during the biblical times. Obviously, we know it's in the Torah, but it's not one of these things that disappears from the Torah later on. It's spoken about quite specifically in various places. So it was taken across the Jordan. The tabernacle, we know, was pitched in Shiloh at times before it was brought to Solomon's temple. We know that during the construction of the second temple, it does not mention the return of the menorah from the first temple. So what we know is there was a menorah in the first temple, maybe as many as 10. And when they built the second temple, they don't mention bringing it, just like they don't mention the Ark of the Covenant. Where could it have gone, this original one? Some say it could have been taken along with the Ark of the Covenant when Jerusalem was sacked by the Egyptians in the 10th century. So that's the theory from Indiana Jones as why the Ark of the Covenant ends up in Egypt. They do mention in the Maccabees, the book of the Maccabees, that Antiochus, the Syrian king, the evil Syrian Greek king, takes away the lampstands. So we know that there were multiple menorahs in the second temple. So we have very good evidence of that because the book of Maccabees was written in the 2nd century BCE and 1st century. So we know there were multiple menorahs in the second temple, but they were not the same ones probably from the first temple. We know after Antiochus takes away the menorahs, when the Maccabees retake the second temple, they build new menorahs. So the menorah that we see in the Arch of Titus is not an ancient menorah that goes all the way back to this time of Solomon or to the time of Moses. The menorahs that we see in the Arch of Titus are the ones that are built during the times probably of the Maccabees, who did have a look at what the previous ones were, so they probably made copies that look similar. So the menorah we have from the Arch of Titus is probably from a copy of menorahs that were placed in the second temple. Now, the question is, when they placed those menorahs in the second temple, did the people who made those menorahs see what the ones in the first temple looked like? Did they have any record of what the first ones looked like, or only did they have the record of the Torah and they recreate it? So the menorahs from the Arch of the Titus might look like the ones from Moses, but they might not. Flossie, that was a lot of information, sorry.
Wow. Yeah, interesting.
Flossie, could you speak up a little bit more? I apologize.
Is a Hanukkah a menorah?
Yes, it is. A Hanukkah is a menorah. Now, what happened obviously is later on, a tradition was taken from the defeat of the Syrian Greeks that when they went in And the story of Hanukkah is they went in, and it lasted for 8 days, and so that is where the Hanukkah comes from. The first Hanukkah I don't think we have is till I'm guessing 4th or 5th century, so much later. We don't believe that the Maccabees actually made Hanukkahs. They did make menorahs, but it seems very logical if the Maccabees are making menorahs, and are they literally making it? They probably hired out some artists to do it. If they're literally making, it stands to reason that years later, the symbol of Hanukkah would be the menorah, because everybody knows it was the symbol of the Maccabees. They made the menorahs to put back in the sanctuary, and it's the symbol of their rebellion on their very coins. After they take over, it's still on the coins all the way to the 1st century when the Romans take over. So it's very interesting to see that this symbol is very historic. There is a slim possibility that the menorah we see on the Arch of Titus looks very much like the menorah they made during the time of Moses. A slim possibility. It has to do with memory. And I'll go over one more time. The menorah built by Bezalel was put in the Holy of Holies, the tabernacle, then was put into the temple. We see it says that it's the same one. Is it the same one they carried around for hundreds of years? Who knows? But there is very specifically says this menorah is placed into the tabernacle, into the temple. So now, did people know what it looked like? Did they have facsimiles of it? Because that menorah disappears sometime between it going in and the Babylonians taking the temple. The question is, when did it leave and who saw it? Because when they built new menorahs for the second temple, did they have diagrams or memories of that menorah that used to be in the temple or the multiple? If they did have memories or diagrams, then the one they put in the second temple would have looked like the one in the first temple, which would have looked like the one from Moses. If there was memories or some sort of diagram, or if people had there was the official temple menorah, but people had good luck charms in their homes. So if memory can, then the one in the second temple, and if the one in the second temple was there taken by the Syrian Greeks, and if the Maccabees saw what it looked like before it was taken, then the ones they built probably looked the same. There's no reason not to build the same. They're considering themselves priests. So that means the one taken by the Arch of Titus that we see depicted in Rome, that one would then look like the one from the time of Moses. That is a very small percentage that is true. The odds are against us, but it's not impossible. Some things in Judaism we say are impossible, that can't happen. There is a possibility that people knew what the menorah looked like. So the menorah we see in the Arch of Titus may be what Moses looked at as well. All right, that's kind of cool. I think that's kind of neat. And if that's true, since we have a definitive picture of it that we know comes from 2,000 years ago, that means we could be looking at exactly what the menorah looked like during the time of Moses.
Wow.
There's a slight chance that is a possibility. So that's, I think, pretty interesting.
I'm just listening to what you're saying, and I'm thinking they must have had some representations of it that carried through time. Thinking about all the things archaeologists have found around the world,
right.
And somehow, whether it was carved in, maybe it was coins, maybe it was, who knows, but just somehow, I like that idea that it is the same one, going all the way back to Moses.
And it could be. It's not, it's not for sure, and it's probably not likely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a possibility, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because, again, the oldest menorahs we have obviously are only from the The Second Temple, they're obviously from the time of the Maccabees. So we do, but that's still 2,000 years ago. I mean, that's pretty good. That's a pretty long time. So, and we just don't know the 1,000 years before, which is also a long time. All right.
I'm never going to see the one in Temple the same way. I'm going to look at it and
Yes.
think about that from now on. I know I will.
I mean, if we didn't have the Maccabees and that Arch of Titus, we could have all kinds of weird shapes of menorahs. I mean, what we read from the Torah is not specific enough for us to see what we see in the Arch of Titus. Not even close. It has some specifics, but we don't know if they're like this. It could be like this. It could be block shaped. We don't know the base, the height, how thick. You know, you have some general description of flowery things you put on there, but what do they look like? What are the colors? You know, it's gold, but was it colored? We don't know. So it's kind of cool to think that that may actually be what it is. So that's the actual symbol of Judaism, even though the Magen David has become the actual symbol today.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you want to be Jewish and inconspicuous, you wear a menorah necklace and nobody's going to know you're Jewish except for maybe Jews. Whereas if you wear a Star of David, a lot of people know you're Jewish. It's really interesting. So that's Jewish symbols. I thought that would be a little fun to do. I just was fun to do something more American Jewish thing. So do we want to do more? So I don't, again, we're not going to do too many American things because we are going to have the course that's been requested from, I think, who wanted to have the course on American history? I can't remember who it was. It was Flossie. I'm just kidding. She's so.
That was the hand that you don't see.
Yes, the hand from the Addams Family. Did you have a question?
No, you asked who
Oh, it's wanted the history course. Yes, so we're going to do a 6-part history course, 3 parts in September, 3 parts in November. So we will do, so it'll be biblical history, post-biblical history in September. In November, it will be American history, Jewish history, and Savannah history. All right, so
are we taking a summer break now until September?
no, we'll still meet on Wednesdays if people want. I think it's fun. It gives me a lot to look up information. What's coming up? Obviously, we've got the big anniversary service, which is the 13th. So that'll be a lot of fun. For those of you who are interested, we are going to start a new tradition on the 12th, on the Friday night before, when they're so close. We're going to honor Chris Solis, who was a member of our congregation who died in serving our country about 6-7 years ago, and he won the Congressional Medal of Honor. So to have a member of our congregation who won the Congressional Medal of Honor posthumously, unfortunately, but his story is unbelievably an unbelievable story of bravery. So we're gonna, and his wife actually, works at our synagogue as well. So we're gonna honor him. We'll start the first
Katie.
one. It's Katie. Yeah. So the first year, again, it's a Friday night before anniversary service. So we'll have a little bit of an oneg. I know it's a little hard to drive sometimes from Sun City, but we just kind of decided that recently. So we're going to start publicizing it now. So that'll be pre-neg for people on schmooze, and then we'll have some things about him. It'll get bigger next year, but this is our first year doing it. But I think it's a great way to honor him. And yes, Karen.
No, I had this thought. We'll be away, but so we won't be there. But what if you had something like if people wanted to come on Friday night and Saturday? Maybe some congregants would open their homes to have people stay over. I don't know. Is that asking a lot?
Not a lot. We could find.
It's a thought. As I say, I won't be there, but
yeah, if people are interested, let me know.
Yeah.
But also, we finish service at 7, so it'd still be light out.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Till at 9.
Okay.
Rabbi, are we having a special speaker for the anniversary?
This year we thought about it and we just couldn't. We decided not. No, so I'm going to do it this year. We haven't had a tradition of speakers on except for the 0 and 5 years. So we do it. We did it at the 275, 280, 285, 290. Once in a while, we've had a speaker different years if something came up or somebody volunteered. But this year, I'll speak a little bit. But we have other things we're going to talk about. a very, every year we talk about a prominent member. We're going to talk about Abraham Einstein, who the Einstein Torah is named after. We're going to read the letter from President George W. Bush, a couple other speakers. So as always, it'll be a beautiful service. And it's only the second one the cantor's going to be singing. Arlene.
What about Rabbi Howard Berman? I remember we had.
We had him one year. Yeah, did we have him for the anniversary service? I can't remember if we did. He may have come for that. He was excellent.
Yeah,
We've had some really good speakers.
Right.
But again, it's about, also, if you get a big speaker, you got to put out, money for that. So we usually put it in the budget if we have it on the 0-5 year.
What I have to just tell you, Rabbi Howard Berman, his grandmother and my grandmother were actually best friends.
Oh, that's cool. He's a good guy.
My grandmother used to take me to his grandmother's house, and I used to eat up all his chocolate chip cookies.
Have you told him this recently?
Yes. So when he came here, he said, "Aha, you're the one."
You should next time he comes
funny.
to town, we'll have Brian. You make sure to have his chocolate chip cookies, and then you can give them back to him
That's why he has
There
to
you
come
go.
back.
years later. Well, guys, it's such a pleasure. So, any thoughts on what we're going to be doing, and that we don't have anything set up for the future? Do you want me to start do individual ones and then start like a course long one, or is there? What anybody have preferences? If not, I'll just pick stuff.
Rabbi, I thought you had planned people who helped the Jews.
Oh, that's right. People who help Jewish. That's right. We'll do that next week.
Right. That's
There'll be connections between non-Jews and Jews.
Yeah,
And it's not just like, we could talk about, the righteous Gentiles. That might be a good one, but we'll go beyond just, Wallenberg and Schindler and people like that. Talk
You were
about-
going to do it for people who helped the Jews during the 20th century.
Yeah, we could talk about that. I think I'll talk about relationships. Talk about Lincoln and the Jews also. Lincoln had a good relationship with the Jewish community. And we talked a little bit about it with some great leaders like Winston Churchill and, Truman, and most impressively, Margaret Thatcher. So, but I think it'll be some others as well.
Rabbi, what made Mark Twain write that very famous article about Jews? You know?
Well, he was very interested in Israel, and he also wanted to travel. So that's one of the reasons. And he also had no money. So his essay, he wrote on it was just something that he had met Jews throughout his life. Now remember, there were a lot of Jews who, probably an inordinate percentage of Jews were like fur traders and went out and did all those crazy things that he did because they wanted to, escape the persecution. They didn't like being so insulated in the Jewish world. So he probably met a lot of them. I just got a note from Brian Graves, who's on vacation, our chef, and he sent me a text because he was in Deadwood, which is a famous cowboy, Wild West town, and it had a note on the old note of the Jewish community there. Where is that? Is that it? Nope, I'll find it. But anyway, so, but when he wrote, we could talk about Mark Twain as well. When he wrote, his concerning the Jews article, it was great because he talked about the scapegoat and how we had been scapegoated. So he also was friends with the lawyers and stuff. So it's interesting. We could talk about that as well. But it led him to one of the reasons he went to Israel, because of his understanding of the Jewish world. He was very much a opponent of the little guy, and he wanted to travel, and he was broke. So that's why he went to Israel. He got along well with the Jewish community. He didn't like Israel. He thought it was a pit, which it was at the time.
At the time, it was, yeah.
I'm sure he would be mesmerized by it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so maybe we'll add him onto the list for next week. because I don't know all the specifics. I just know the generalities. All right, guys, a pleasure.
Thank
so
you.
next week we'll talk about Friends of the Jewish Community. And anything, if you think of courses, we can start doing philosophy again or theology or particular histories as well. So just let me know, guys. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you. Arya, can you come say goodbye?
Thank you.
Okay, my son says bye.
Bye.
Stay safe,
Rabbi,
everybody.
I'll be in Arizona next week. But
Oh,
if I
have a
can-
good trip.
If I can get up early enough.
Maybe you'll go to.
7:30 there, so if I can.
Well, if you go to Tombstone, it's not. If you go to Tombstone, they do have a Jewish cemetery there. Just so you can.
Oh, well, we're going to be. Well, I don't know where that is. We'll be in Sedona for.
Okay, yeah, that's not near there, but
No,
it's
I was going to say I don't think so. but
Tombstone's
yeah.
in in the way.
If I
Alright,
get up
guys,
early enough, I'll join you. Okay.
Alright, stay
Thanks,
safe.
Rabbi.
Be good. Be
Alright.
safe.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks for joining us,
Bye-bye.
everybody.